Hey guys, what's up? This is Chaos here. I'm back here with another one, and I'm doing a band I've never done on this channel before, Carcass. Now that album is, let me see if I could pronounce this right, Necrotism. Now, this is one of my favorite old school death metal bands. I've also said that about other death metal bands like Pestilence, but this is different than necessary from old school. It's down tuned guitars, but kind of slower than typical. You would say faster, brutal death metal. But the thing with brutal is that it's not necessarily brutal in this band. He has a lot of fry screams, which is very common in black metal necessarily. So it's a weird mix and combination to do, and with the fact that they play slower usually too. Now you can tell there's a speed in it and a tempo that you would say is necessarily faster than most music, but it's still a really cool combination they have going on. But with that being said, let's go into their first song. And sorry if I can't pronounce these words right. Um, but let's go into Impropagation. Now, this song necessarily is about humans' remains being cremated and used as fertilizer. In most death metal songs or a lot of bands, it's mess around lyrics, and it makes a lot of sense with Carcass because their first album was uh, it was a lot different necessarily, and their songs were a lot shorter. But you also find that uh, their songs now are a lot longer necessarily for the most part, like even 6 to 7 minutes necessarily. Now, to me, all of these intros, and this song also has an introduction. It has this voicing that reminds me of the old first Batman Arkham Asylum game. So, if you ever played Arkham Asylum, it's like an institutionalized voice off of every single one of these songs, at least the ones I've heard. I picked the top five. I liked all the top five. I didn't listen to the whole album necessarily, but I did pick my top favorites. They try to go for this extremely scary horror theme, but other than that, the song's kind of it has a tempo. Obviously, it's it's really interesting actually, and it's an awesome start off to this album. Now, my personal number review of the song, I'd have to give it a 7 out of 10. Not too high, not too low necessarily. Surely not under a 5. But other than that, let's go into the next song, which is probably my favorite or one of my favorites that gets me more so going. Corporal Jigsaw Quantity. Now, this has another one of those voices like I talked about before, the institutionalized weird woman voice, but I think some of them are males too. Now, this is very enjoyable. It has an amazing little small drum solo, and then the guitars kick in, and it also has a solo of the guitars later on. Now, Carcass definitely has their own sound. Once you hear them, their guitars and vocals, you can definitely tell it's not like a typical other death metal band. Now, with that being said, the song is very simple. It's about an autopsy, basically. And when they were making this song, Walker, I think he's the singer, said that they were, or he himself, during his, when he was 18, 19, he was pretty lazy, so he just wanted to do something simple, a good sounding riff, which is a lot of rhythm guitarists necessarily, and just repeat it over and over and over again, and then they add a little and a small solo and etc. Nothing too big necessarily, too different. You can definitely hear a repetitiveness in this album, but they do have a lot of good songs off of here. Now, personally, my number review of the song, I'd have to say an 8 out of 10. One of my favorites off of here is not my the favorite, but another thing I like to go back, I want to backtrack and add on to. So a lot of death metal is repetitive in the first place, but except for some other bands, but it does. I guess it kind of makes sense with what he was saying, because a lot of death metal bands, they do start out pretty young, and then they start to change after 4 or 5 albums necessarily. But with that being said, let's go into the next song. I don't think I'm gonna be able to pronounce this right. Synoposum of Sickness. So essentially,
Synopsis.
I see the song about raising the dead back to life in a sense. The people who are doing this are necessarily screwing themselves over in the story. The common thing with necromancy and black magic and trying to screw with people and the dead, it always comes back to bite you in the ass, which is their version of karma necessarily, if you practice black magic. But with that being said, it's literally just remaking zombies essentially. Other than that, my personal number review of this song I'd have to say is a 7 out of 10. Now with that being said, let's go into the next song, Pedigree Butchery. I'm almost positive this song is about turning dead babies into doggy chow or something, at least from what the lyrics sounded like, and I've also read some other reviews of people's own interpretation. It sounds pretty similar to mine. Now, with that being said, it's typical, and it's my favorite or second favorite song off of this album, just by the way it sounds. So, with that being said, you can probably guess fairly easy. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. That's my personal number review. But other than that, there's a whole lot to say. So let's go into the next song. Carnaris Cacophony, something like that. I like to think this song, for what it sounds like, is that it's making body parts into instruments and playing them necessarily. I'm guessing more so like primal instruments, but reading the lyrics, it's kind of hard to necessarily depict, because how do you depict lyrics with body parts and making them into instruments necessarily? So there's definitely a more humorous side in some form of way to Carcass and many other death metal bands, even though it's kind of weird and twisted. They like to go for this vibe of where it's not meant for everybody, but a lot of songs aren't really too meaningful necessarily. Now, when I can find a death metal band that actually has a lot of emotional meaning, those are my favorite bands, like Dying Fetus, for example. Their two newest albums, but Reign Supreme and I think The Wrong One to Fuck With, those are clearly very very emotional albums. Now, I do prefer their older stuff, but after the first few albums, they also did get pretty emotional. But all their songs that I have seen and looked into lyrics necessarily actually do have pretty deep meanings. But with that being said, I would give this song necessarily an 8 out of 10. It's a pretty decent song like all the other songs. It's kind of repetitive like the other ones, but I could say that about Deicide's Once Upon a Cross. A lot of those songs sound similar and the same. Not the same to Carcass, but the songs in general just sound repetitive and alike. Now, with that being said, let's go into the extra information of this album. This awesome album came out in 1991. This is Carcass's third album. There isn't a whole lot of facts about this album, so there's something I've been wanting to talk this whole album review. We have finally hit the 40th review, and I'm happy to say it starts with this amazing band, Carcass. I'm generally happy and proud to do these videos, even though sometimes I get sidetracked because of my ADHD or whatever you want to call it, and hate writing the script sometimes, but I generally do enjoy doing these. But with everything I love to do, I do get sidetracked, and if I really, really, really want to do it, I'll hype myself up and try to do it. But with that being said, I hope you like, comment, subscribe, and to make sure to stay positive and to always have a good one. Now, Luke will probably be doing another review necessarily in the future, but the past couple weeks, or the past future weeks, I'll try to get to 50 reviews. So that's 10 more videos already necessarily. So other than that, that's it. And have a good one, guys.